That's what I was thinking.
Okay, I think it's good.
Okay.
One-
Okay. Well, good to meet you. Thank you for reaching out to me in regards to the music creation for compensation. And you are in Philadelphia, right?
Um, I'm in Pittsburgh.
Oh, in Pittsburgh. Okay. I know
Yeah,
it's something
yep,
with
I'm
a
from
P
near
in it.
Philadelphia. So,
Yeah. Okay.
um, yeah, so thanks for, agreeing to the interview. And I have a few like just intro questions. Just
Okay.
where are you from and how did you like get into ragtime music?
I'm from Chicago, which I'm presently living now, born and raised here in Chicago, and I got into ragtime music through. I started listening to music from the 1930s, like big band music,
Mhm.
all of that, and that led to an interest in or even earlier music. Around the time I was getting into big band music, I was the movie The Cotton Club came out. That movie from with Richard Gere and Diane Lane and Gregory Hines, and and I was very interested in Chicago history, jazz, and all of that during that period. So when I Scott Joplin's music, well, I actually kind of heard it for years. I didn't know I was listening to it on ice cream truck, and I had
Oh,
no idea. Yeah, I had no idea that the tune was called "The Entertainer" and who it was written by. So when I we had an assembly, and when I was in seventh grade, um, the musicians came to my school and they put on an assembly called "From Bach to Bebop." And in the middle of the program, I heard that ice cream truck song, but it was played on the school piano. And the MC mentioned that the style of music was called ragtime. So I was like, oh wow, I didn't realize this was a style of music. I just knew it was the ice cream truck song. So now, me being interested in old music forms and in jazz, that made me just even more excited about to find out what this style, find out more about that music. And I had read about after the assembly, I looked up the musician. I looked up ragtime, the word ragtime in the encyclopedia, and it mentions for more information, C. Scott Joplin, who was known as the king of ragtime writers. So that was the beginning. That's how I got into ragtime. Yeah.
very cool. Um, so you were from Chicago and the film compensation was made in UCLA. Did you go to UCLA? Like what were the
Oh
circumstances?
no, no. Compensation was made in Chicago.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
at the time. Yeah, Zeinabu was living in Chicago. Zeinabu and her husband, they were living here in Chicago, and she was living in the Rogers Park neighborhood. And she contacted me. I forgot how she. I think she sent me a letter through the mail. We didn't have email back then. I don't think. Well, no, I don't think I had internet at that time. That was 1998. I think it was 1998. She contacted me, so she sent me a letter, and I got this letter in the mail, and I think if I remember correctly, that's the way she contacted me, and she was interested in me writing music for her film, a film she had been working on, and I was excited about it. I thought, I thought this would be a great opportunity for me to, I love creating music, have a reason to really create music. So he contacted me about writing music for her film, and so I met her, and she gave me I still have them, all the original videos that she gave me when she was still putting the film together. And the last part that was filmed was the scene where I'm in it. I don't know if you know, there's a scene that I'm actually in the film where we were running around the table in the
oh,
silent movie. Yeah,
yeah.
that's me with it. Yeah.
I did not realize that you were in it.
Yeah, that was funny because I'm not an actor and I'm laughing. The guy pulling a gun on me, but I'm laughing while because I can't act. You know what I mean? I'm like, this is fun. I'm just having fun. So I try to stop from smiling while I'm, but you can kind of see it. I think she kind of angled the camera where you couldn't see it. You know, but yeah, that was the last scene in the film that the actual last part that was made.
Right.
Everything else was prior to that. She had filmed it already like years before. You
Had you ever made like film music before that? Or
No, that was the beginning of it. Yeah.
but you had made an album before that, right?
Oh yeah, I had by then I had 3 albums
Three
under my
albums.
belt for a record label here in Chicago, Delmark Records. hmm but and I had made music for theater.
Hmm.
I've been in theater before then, but I had never written anything for film. So, yeah.
Did you write anything after?
For film, let's see. Yes, I did. I made music for independent film called Morning Dew. The filmmaker Barbara Allen. I think she's friends with Zeinabu as well. They know each other. Um, and I wrote some music for. I can't remember everything. I did some music for her documentaries, Barbara Allen's documentary. She has two big documentaries. One is called Paper Trail, 100 Years of the Chicago Defender, and then there's another one called Do Sabo to Obama, Chicago's Black Metropolis, and I think that was about 2008 when that came out. And let's see, I can't remember. There was a couple short films I made music for. I don't remember the names of them. Um, but yeah, that was back in like 1999 to the year 2000, around that time. Barbara Allen's things was later. Her documentary Paper Trail was from 2005, and Chicago's Black Metropolis was from 2008.
And for the Chicago's Black Metropolis, on your page it said you were also a historian for that.
Oh yeah, yeah, because I also sort of was a historian because the music I not only research the music, but I like to do the story behind the music to find out the musicians who created the music, when they created it, under what circumstances, all the information about what I'm playing before I learn the music, So yeah, and the time period where they lived, all of that. So I guess I could be sort of a historian as well. Yeah.
Interesting, yeah. When I talked to Mark after the show, he like mentioned that you had an award for some kind of research that you did.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. The MacArthur Award, the
Yeah,
John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur grants. They don't call them Genius grants, but people call them. The media calls it the
yeah,
Genius grant.
he did refer to it as that, and he said
Yeah.
genius musician. So
Yep. Yep. But I think it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest. Well, there's another one. I don't know if they still give it, but there's a more recent award, not from the MacArthur Foundation, but another foundation. But the MacArthur is the biggest. It has been the biggest for years in the art world, and it's any art. It's like if you're an illustrator, if you're a scientist, teacher, dancer. They just give the award to anybody who they think is exceptional in their field, their craft. And I was selected. I was like, wow. So when we have these meetings every 2 years, I wonder what the heck am I doing here? Because I see people who are literal scientists, and they'll give do a talk on their work, and they have like slides, and or they do like a what do you call it, a PowerPoint, and
yeah,
they're talking about how they do what they do. Oh, I'm a conservationist, and I work with wildlife or whatever, and I'm looking at all the details. And some lady like has cameras in the middle of the forest, and she's taking pictures. She's breaking this information down on how she photographs over a year, over 2 and 3 years, and the changing in the environment. And I'm like, wow.
yeah,
And I'm just talking about music. I'm just speaking about my music, and I'm like, what the heck am I doing in this room with all these scientists and you know, but they that's how it works.
yeah.
Some,
What was the research that you did that like made them single you out?
what I found was there's a photograph of Scott Joplin's piano,
Oh,
and it was taken in it was originally historians, the official historians, musical historians, originally thought it was from 1903, the photograph, but I found out that it was actually from 1947. That Scott Joplin's widow had the picture taken in 1947. She was living in Harlem, And if the boarding house, the building she was living in, was the building that her and her husband Scott Joplin owned. It was a boarding house, and musicians, all the musicians in town would stop there, and they lived there. People like Jelly Roll Morton even came there, and Fats Waller and Willie Lyon Smith and Moms Mabley and all of these people would live there at one point in time, And she still had her husband's music, and she had a photograph taken of the piano because there was a guy who was a student. He called him. This is the way he billed himself. Scott Joplin's only white pupil, named Brun Campbell, and Brun Campbell was doing an article on Scott Joplin in 1947 to celebrate his life. But Scott Joplin died years before in 1917. So in April of 1917, April 1st actually, and so Brun Campbell wanted to do something to commemorate the life or show some respect for Scott Joplin, his teacher. So he did an article on Scott Joplin's life, his legacy, and he interviewed Joplin's widow, Lottie Joplin. So and you could probably pull it up online. Her talk. She's talking about Scott Joplin. Louis Armstrong was talking about him as well. And but this article was from a magazine called The Record Changer. It's called The Record Changer. It was a popular jazz magazine back in those days, in the 40s and 50s. And so Brun Campbell's article is about Scott Joplin, and the photograph of his piano is in that article. So what would Lottie Joplin, her name was Lottie, Lottie, Lottie Joplin, or Lottie Stokes. That was his wife, his widow. She when I found out where the picture was located. Me and a friend Chris Ware, who's an illustrator, we traveled down to Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee, and got the original photograph to look at the music, because what she did, his widow, took some sheet music because she knew there was a photographer going to come and take a picture of the piano. So what she did is went in his Scott Joplin's old duffel bag and pulled out some music, some random music, and just placed it on the piano. And the piano, I'm like looking at the photograph. I see the piano, I see the ashtray. So I said, "Oh wow, does Scott Joplin smoke?" Nobody, even to this day, nobody's mentioned that. But I noticed there's an ashtray on that piano, and I'm like, "Oh, maybe Scott Joplin he smoked cigars or something, Because why would she have an ashtray on that piano? Maybe it's just something she didn't pay attention to, But why would it be an ashtray on the piano itself? But anyway, she had 3 pieces of music on the music rack. One of them I found out when I got to Fisk, and I got a magnifying glass, and I still have the magnifying glass. I found it. That's like right over here. I got this magnifying glass. This is in 1997 that I did the research, and I used a magnifying glass and wrote down. I could see the music. It's very difficult to see what the music was, but I realized the first page on the left, the first piece of music on the left of the rack, is a piece called Solace, and it was the published version of Solace. So it was not the handwritten manuscript; it was the actual published version of it. So that's why it's a little taller than the other music on the rack. The other 2 pieces were actual handwritten manuscript, and the middle piece was I guess this is where the award came from. It's a piece of music that Scott Joplin, something he was working on. You can see his handwriting, and he's got notes on it. He's got lyrics. The music has lyrics, and I noticed that it was a ragtime song, and I was like, I don't know any ragtime song by Scott Joplin. I don't know I know his opera. I said, this doesn't look like anything from his opera Treemonisha or any other music that I've ever seen. I said, it's ragtime. It's a song, and it's in 4/4 time. So I immediately said, wow, you can almost recognize this music. But so I looked at it. I can. Well, I'm kind of ahead of myself. Before I found the music, there was a print of it in a book here in Chicago, and at the library where Mark worked, Zeinabu's husband, at the Woodson, I found this book on Scott Joplin by Coretta Scott King, and in the book, the first page when you open the book, it was a big picture of the piano, and it's just as much as you can see the music, you can't see. You can't see what it is. It's like it's
Right.
hard to understand what it is. Like the bigger you blow the picture up, the more it turns into little dots. So it's like the quality was bad. So that's what made me and a friend of my associate of mine, Chris Ware, decide to go to Fisk University, where the original picture was on deposit. And so when we got down there, I used a magnifying glass and wrote down the music. I could see it very clearly what was on it. So it's weird. It's like looking through a time, like looking through a window in time, and I was transcribing the notes. And when I got back to Chicago, well, before I get to that, I'll say the third piece on the right is a piece that we both figured out. It took us a long time to figure it out, maybe like 30 or 40 minutes trying to figure out the title of it because it was in cursive. And I was like, I can't make it out. He's like, notes? And I was like, yeah, I see notes there. So, but what are the first words? I figured it out. It's like, I'm nuts about notes. That was a piece that he was working on that somebody had gave him, I think M. Lucas and I think of Maria Lucas. So that was the other page. But the middle one was something sounds like Joplin, like something he was working on from an opera, or so it sounds very advanced. So it's like you could tell he wrote it short, not long before he passed away. Like it's more advanced than the earlier stuff, you know. So I wrote that down and came back to Chicago and recorded it, and that was the history. I put it on my album called Euphonic Sounds, and you can pull it up on YouTube.
Oh yeah, I
Yep.
did see your YouTube, and I was gonna link your YouTube, and you have Spotify as well, right?
I don't have Spotify, but I want to tell you I have an official YouTube channel. Now that other one is not mine. That's the record label.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my official channel has like a spaceman on it. You'll see that. Yeah,
Uh,
that's my official channel. Yeah,
that is linked
yeah,
in your page, your like website. So I got
yes.
YouTube with the spaceman.
Hmm.
Uh,
Okay.
and
The reason for that is that's my album cover. So
oh,
I just use the image from it and put it on. Yeah.
euphonic sound, you said?
No, Euphonic Sounds was the one produced by the record label that I don't work with anymore. But you can pull up the three albums that I recorded for Delmar Records on that through their site. It's
Uh,
there. It should say like Reginald R. Robinson or something like that, and
yeah.
it'll have a picture. It'll have that picture with me, like a black cover with fancy artwork by Chris Ware. He was the one that who we both went to Fisk University to get the
Right.
picture, but he also for that album he did the art design for it. Yep.
So you found these pieces that had not been like even heard before ever?
Yeah, that piece had never been not in our time,
Wow.
and nobody's time, and Scott Joplin wrote it, and it was never published. We don't still know the words. Some of the words you could identify with it, and in the lyrics, he was saying something like walking, talking. I love her too, or something like this. Like it's telling a story, and but it's in cursive. So
Hard to read.
yeah, and it's page 2, so we have no idea what the name of the work was. Yep.
Oh, well, that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Isn't that something? And when you hear it, you realize it's Scott Joplin. But it's music.
Yeah,
It's something we've never heard before. You know.
it's very recognizable music for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So that is amazing. Let's see. So would you okay, I also saw that, I mean, with all of this history, clearly very into history and preserving history and uncovering history that has been lost. Um, and you were involved in presenting the first owned and operated African American music theater?
Oh yeah, the Pekin Theater.
Yeah, yeah.
Pekin. Yeah, the Pekin Theater was owned and operated by Robert T. Mott's. Robert T. Mott's sort of, I guess you could sort of say he was a policy king. Not sort of say, but he was a policy king. But I guess you could sort of say he was a sort of a gangster in the early 1900s. He really was. Um, the way Joe Jordan, the ragtime composer, put it, he said he was one of the gambling czars back then. That's the way he put it. But he was a member of the Frogs, which was a group that the Burt Williams and George Walker and many of the artists from the East Coast were members of. The Frogs was like a theater organization for black performers, and so Robert T. Moss was one of those members. But he opened the Pekin Theater in 1903, and it was the first owned and operated theater for black performances, strictly like just black performances. and the seating was open for everybody. Anybody could visit the Pekin Theater, and the seating was it was no black people didn't have to sit in the balconies and all that. They could sit right on the main level with everybody else. So it was like integrated.
Right.
And yep, but Joe Jordan was a ragtime composer. He wrote a lot of compositions for shows at the Pekin Theater. They would have a new show every week, and he wrote several hundred pieces for the show. He would write music every week for a new show. That's what he said.
Like,
Yeah, yeah.
a lot of work.
He's on recording. Yeah, he's on recording in 1962 saying this. He said, "How do you think I wrote all these pieces?" He said, "I had to have something to write it for, so I wrote pieces every week for a new show." He said, "Every week we had a new show at the Peak Theater," and this is like 1903 to I think around 1908, 1909. But Joe Jordan was one of the things that he became a millionaire a couple times in his life. He wrote a song called "Lovey Joe." And it was the song that gave, I don't know if you know the singer Fanny Brice.
I think I've heard of that.
Funny Girl. Barbara Streisand made a
Yeah.
movie called Funny Girl. Yeah, about Fanny Brice's life. But her way to stardom was through one of Joe Jordan's pieces. He wrote a piece called Lovey Joe in 1910, and that's the song that put her on the map. Yep.
That's amazing.
Yep. It was for the Ziegfeld Follies. Yep. So Joe Jordan was friends with Scott Joplin. He was in St. Louis before he came to Chicago. The Pekin Theater was here in Chicago, but before he came to Chicago, he was in St. Louis, and he was a member of a private club for musicians called the Hurrah Sporting Club. And it was a club that I think Scott Joplin belonged to, Louis Chauvin, Joe Jordan. It was ran by Tom Turpin, who was the proprietor of the business. He owned the Rosebud Bar. And the Rosebud Bar, in the back of the Rosebud Bar was the Hurrah Sporting Club. It was off the alley. It was just strictly for musicians, and they would have piano contests and all that kind of thing. There's a picture of all the Hurrah Sporting Club members, not everybody, but it's a bunch of them out in front. That were out in front of the Hurrah Sporting Club, and you see Louis Chauvin, who was a great piano player. He was known as the king of ragtime pianists in St. Louis. He's holding a sign up says Hurrah Sporting Club. This is like 1904.
Is it still there?
Huh?
This place
Oh
is.
no, the club is no longer exists. Yeah, but the photograph is amazing because you got all these guys in like 1904. They're standing out with bowler hats on, and they have two of them have dogs, like they're holding a dog by the leash, and you know, and but yeah, but you recognize some of the ragtime musicians standing there out there in front of this bar. It's not the bar, but the club. Mm-hmm. Oh. I want to also tell you this too. I haven't told anybody, but this piano is historic. It's a historic piano. I bought it a year. Yeah, I bought it a year before last at an estate sale, and it belongs to the lady in the picture behind me, lady here.
I was going to ask about the pictures.
Yeah, she was in. Are you familiar with Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers?
Yeah.
She's in their very first movie,
Oh, wow.
Flying Down to Rio. She's the lady that comes out that sings the karaoke with the banana with the basket on her head.
Yeah.
Have you seen that movie?
I think I've seen that scene.
Yeah, that's her. This is her piano. And I had no idea she lived in Chicago. But they had an estate sale and they was selling all of her stuff. And I said, man, when I got there, I was like, wow, everybody who's who of Chicago was there trying to buy everything. Right. Her family was just giving away all her stuff. I mean, selling it. And so I got this picture. One picture is her with the basket on her head from the flying down to Rio, And it's the original picture. And this lamp was hers. This lamp, she was like traveled around the world, and she like went to Africa, and she had a lot of statues and stuff. And I remember when I went to this estate sale, I was like, wow, it's sad in a way because this is her stuff that she owned, and her family should keep it, but they were giving away like I mean not giving it away, but selling it, all these statues and just China and everything, But I said I need something that's functional that I can use. I don't want to just get something, some clothes, and sit looking at it. So I got the piano, and I got a few pictures, and then
How old would it be then?
This piano was from 1958.
Wow.
Yep. So she brought it later on. But who knows who played it? You know,
Yeah.
she used to have big parties, and who knows? Nat King Cole made a played on there. Duke Ellington, who knows? Because she was in society, you know, and during that time, and she traveled and stuff. Because you have to really think like she's in a movie in 1933 in a huge musical segment, and it's Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers' first musical segment together when they dance together. She's in that segment. Yeah, when they doing the karaoke,
Hmm.
and but yeah, her
And
name was Etta Moulton Barnett, but originally Etta Moulton, and she had sheet music. I have one piece of sheet music. She also appeared in a movie with Joan Blondell from the same year, 1933. I think it's called The Gold Diggers. Um, I think it's Gold Diggers of 1933, and she sings a song called My Forgotten Man. Joan Blondell sings it first, and then she sings it afterward. And that's what's the. I was going to mention also too. You know, Porgy and Bess, George Gershwin's Porgy and Bess. He wrote the part for Bess for her. That was originally written for Etta Moulton Barnett. Yeah, yeah. So that's why I say it's a historic piano.
yeah.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, and I don't tell people about it, but you're the first that I'm telling us. You know, taking notes on it.
Thank you for telling because it's very
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
And
You're
could I
welcome.
ask about the other pictures on the wall behind you? Because I know.
Oh, well, it's a picture of Blind Boom, who was a pioneer. This is his company. I wish I could show you pictures closer, but Boom was he predated Scott Joplin. So
Mhm.
his first published music was in 1880, and he was an early writer of ragtime. He didn't write; he was blind, but somebody took the notes down for him. Yeah, completely blind, but he was an incredible musician. He could play anything that he heard after hearing it once or twice, no matter who it was. If it was Beethoven or Bach or Chopin or Franz Liszt or any, he played that music in concert, and he was one of the highest paid performers in the world, especially in America. In America, he was probably the highest paid musician at that time. Yeah, and but he was in his. I interviewed his niece. She was 99 years old. I interviewed her in 2008, and I still have the recording with her talking. Um, she's like, Boom, he didn't want to do this. He didn't want to be a broom man. They wanted him to make brooms, put him in a factory to make brooms. He wasn't a broom man, you know. And she said he was well. She said he was well known, even more than Scott Joplin in his time. And I was going, okay, well, but yeah, that's Boom. Then that's Scott Joplin, picture of Joplin. This is an original picture. Well, it's not an original, but it's a clearer copy.
Mhm.
Then this picture of Arthur Marshall, who was a protege of Joplin. And of course, the three pictures on top are Etta Moulton Barnett, and it's UB Blake. I don't know if you know who UB Blake is, but
I don't.
UB Blake, he was his partner. He was famous for Shuffle Along, the play on Broadway, the first real successful black play on Broadway called Shuffle Along, and it was 1921. It was UB Blake and Noble Sissel, so Sissel and Blake. But that's a very early picture of UB Blake from about 1917 somewhere around there. Then above that is James Scott. James Scott was a protege, not really a protege of Scott Joplin, but he was a I guess, sort of a protege. But they called him the second. He was the pretty much like the one of the big three: Scott Joplin, James Scott, and then it was Joseph Lamb. And Joseph Lamb was from Brooklyn. He was a white ragtime composer, but his music was on a pretty much. He sounded very much like Scott Joplin and a lot of the black players. So he was on in the upper three, in the level of the upper three. And but James Scott, Scott Joplin, and Joseph Lamb, one of the big three. But that's James Scott. Yep. Yeah.
Kind of funny that there's two Scots.
Yeah. Just, and that's something. He has a piece called Great Scott as well. Great Scott Rag. But his music, when you listen to it, it sounds a lot like Joplin. But you can tell once you really listen to it a lot, you can tell the difference. But he was a very good writer. Joseph Lamb stuff though is like very poetic and beautiful. If you ever heard any of his music, if you have not, I would suggest listening to it. Really beautiful ragtime music. He wrote this pieces that were like really romantic ragtime pieces, like Ragtime Nightingale. He has a piece called Cottontail Rag. I mean, it's like just beautiful. It's just I recorded Cottontail. It's on my two of his pieces, Joseph Lamb's, on my Euphonic Sounds album. That one with the Scott Joplin fragment. The very last song on it is Joseph Lamb's Cottontail. Yeah. And on that album too is Louis Chauvin, the guy I told you was like the king of ragtime piano players in St. Louis. His music, I recorded 3 pieces by Louis Chauvin, and two of them, nobody had ever really heard before. And the one piece that people know it is Heliotrope Bouquet. That piece is more well known because Scott Joplin is a collaboration between Scott Joplin and Louis Chauvin. But the other 2 pieces are not known, and I recorded those. I got a copy. There's a historian in St. Louis that gave me a copy of his music. I'm like, wow, you got this music and you're not playing it or performing it anyway. He's like, you just had it. Like, I was like, okay, well, when I know what to do when I get back to Chicago, I'm recording it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, this meeting is gonna end in 10 minutes. I think I just got like a
Okay.
notification. But if you wanted to like say anything else or maybe like play something,
I wish I could. This piano is out of tune. I would play something for you. Let's see. Let's see what I can do here. I don't want this thing to fall down. First half of the Entertainer. And yeah, thank you. And then Louis Chauvin, who I was telling you about, that great piano player in St. Louis, he died very young. I think he died at the age of 26 in 1908. But this is his part of it called Heliotrope Bouquet. it goes into Scott Joplin. That's the section that Scott Joplin finished. He finished the piece, you know. Anyway, that was published in 1908 and by John Stark, Scott Joplin's publisher.
That was beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for playing.
You're welcome. I'm actually working on a new ragtime piece right now. I started working on it. I haven't written anything in like two to 3 years, and I
Oh,
just started on a Saturday. Yeah, so this is I'm trying to get my inspiration back for writing again because I've been working here and there doing music, but since the pandemic, a lot of things slowed down for a lot of musicians, and that's part of where I feel like something I'm losing is the inspiration. So I got back into I started writing on Saturday. And it's beautiful. I can't play it that well, but so I won't try to play it. But I'll eventually record it. I don't even have a name for it yet, but yep, something I've been working on. So.
thank you very much for sharing all of that.
You are very much welcome. And I don't know if your interview will be anywhere that I can look it up, or
Uh,
if not, it's okay.
yeah, it
Yeah.
should be public. I'll like email you further and let you know whenever everything's up online.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
and let me just stop recording real quick.